welcome to NEK VT Rocks. My guest today is Lila Bennett, and Lila is now the Executive Director of Journey to Recovery Community Center. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
When did you start at Jrtcc?
Yes. So I started in April of 2020. So right in the height of the pandemic.
The height of invisibility.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So it's been quite an interesting year of sort of needing to transition to remote and telehealth and Zoom and how to access people, and now we're sort of evolving back into to a hybrid. I don't think we'll ever go back entirely to all in person.
For those who don't know anything about the history of the
Yes.
organization or even what it is, can you just fill us in a bit?
Absolutely. So Journey to Recovery Community Center is a peer-based support center for people who are looking for support or recovery from substance abuse.
And that's substance abuse across the board. You're
Yes.
not just for alcoholics, you're not just for drug addiction, you're not just for gamblers or just
That's
for,
right.
just
So
for.
we are. It's actually really pretty cool because it's when you think of addiction, right?
Yeah.
Like you just think alcoholic or you think drugs, cocaine,
Mm-hmm.
crack, whatever. We do support people who
Sure.
want to stop using. We support family members of people who are
Yeah.
struggling with addiction. So and that also covers codependency.
Right.
Codependency is kind of an addiction, actually. It's when
It's the way women are socialized.
yeah, and so we focus a lot on codependency.
Yeah.
We have a seeking safety group also. So we look at abuse of relationships, and then we look at substances, eating, gambling. Our center is a recovery center, so
Right.
it's about making your life better. And then we look at what are the behaviors you're doing that's making your life hard,
Right.
and how can we help you create a plan that's going to truly improve your life. And we are a peer support recovery center, so that means that we're not clinicians, we're not we're not therapists, we're not doctors, it's nothing like that. We are people who have actual experience. So we've lived through things is basically what it means.
Right.
We are able to provide support, guidance, plans because we ourselves hit a bottom of one kind or another and had
Right.
to resurrect. And so we know how to resurrect.
Right.
And that's why it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to work with a street-based organization, and nothing connects like somebody who's been there.
Right.
Or still is there in some
Yes.
ways, because it's a process.
Yeah, you're always there. It's an evolution.
Right.
You're never fixed.
Right.
No one's suddenly better. It's a constant examination of your life and your tendencies and where you're going and where you've been, and I think that that's why we are able to give people hope who don't have any.
Right.
Is that we can say, we've been there, we know, and we're okay, and so
Right.
you're going to be okay too.
We can have a life, we can move forward, we can have jobs. Hey, I can be the director of an
Yes,
organization.
exactly. All is not lost, even when you think everything is
Right.
ruined.
Yeah.
And that's why what we do at Journey to Recovery is so beautiful, and it's also why it's so important, is that it's not like a prescribed it's no one telling you what to do. It's sort of it's an internal sharing, I think, and that's why what we have helps so many people.
And since your tenure, you've moved, because you were sitting on 3rd Street.
Yes. So when I came on board, I had been peripherally involved in the recovery center and watching from afar and feeling like, oh my gosh, there's so much more that this center could be doing to help the people. And I wanted to be a part of that. And one thing that I disliked greatly about the location on 3rd Street was how it felt when you walked in the door.
Right.
You know, a lot of times when people are struggling or they're in active addiction, like all of their money, all of their everything, all of their attention is going toward using. So their house is usually a mess if they even have a house.
Right.
It like life is chaos and disaster. And what it felt like when you walked into the old recovery center, it was like the carpet was stained. It was like dingy.
Right.
You know, yuck. More of the same.
Yes.
So where's the hope?
Right.
And so the first thing that I wanted to do was like get out of there and move to a place where when you walk in the door, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's hope. It's you can trust that this place is going to help you get to that feeling of like bright and clean and, you know, everything that you can dream of. And so we looked around, and we were so lucky to find the location right across from the hospital. In the Birchwood Medical Building. It's 212 Prouty Drive. It's gorgeous.
It's the brown building set back from the road.
Yes.
We all know it.
Yes, and there's a nice little blue sign out front now that says Journey to Recovery. And we when we first bought the building, we were still in the middle of COVID. And so...
we're still in the middle of COVID.
Yes, we are. But we weren't really seeing people in person.
Right.
But now our staff is vaccinated, and we are hosting all of our meetings in person and over Zoom. You can do both. It's really exciting. The location is great because not only do we have like offices for one-on-one, you can just come in and talk to someone. We have a beautiful conference room, and we were lucky enough to get a grant to buy a humongous television that has the technology to make it feel like anyone who's joining by Zoom is part of the group.
Well, that's nice.
It's really nice. So even if you're not sitting in the room,
you're sitting in the
you're
room.
sitting in the room, and it really doesn't feel very different at all.
Yeah.
So it's exciting because the center has moved. It's bright. It's cheery. It's right across from the hospital. It's on the bus route. And if you can't get there, we have the technology to make it feel like you're there. And so a lot of good things are happening.
So how did people find out you'd moved if they were looking for help?
So we also, Journey to Recovery didn't really have a website before.
Right.
It was like, you know, just a sort of dumpster fire. We have a new website, which is Jrtcc.org, and that has our new location. It has all kinds of information. It has a calendar with all of our groups, all the Zoom links if you just wanted to join a group by Zoom. And there's press releases that are loaded on that website that talk about our location too.
Great.
We have put press releases in the paper. I think doing things like this, anything that we can do to get the word out that we
have a Facebook page,
and we have a Facebook page that we are actively, you know, we post on all the time, and people can message us on that page anytime, you know, 24 hours a day if they can't get a hold of us in any other way. Facebook is a pretty good way for people to message.
Do you offer 24-hour service?
We do offer 24-hour service. Yes,
that's a big commitment.
We are a 24/7 center. We have pagers, so it's pretty awesome. The hospital is in charge of paging us at night. So if you go to the emergency room for an overdose or for drinking too much or for anything to do with substance use, the hospital pages us, and whoever is on call goes in and, you know, provides whatever support is needed at the time. Sometimes it's just someone to talk to.
Right.
Sometimes it's somebody wants to go to rehab, or sometimes somebody doesn't know what to do, but that they're not safe and they need help.
Yeah. So there's enough of you that you can provide that.
Well, we need more people, but we're doing it. Yes, it's something that feels really necessary right now in the community. I think, especially with COVID,
right?
People are isolated, and
it's really hard right now.
Yes, I think, despite what some people say, you know, oh, there's all the stimulus money and people are just home and it's, you know,
not
hunky
true.
dory. It's
just
just
not true.
People have lost their identities
Right.
because our culture raises you that your job is who you are.
Right.
And when you've lost that job
Mhm.
and you're home with little kids all day, it's really not glamorous. It's hard.
Mhm.
And we're really seeing a lot of people who are truly suffering. And I think that that's the other piece that I'm so excited about my work at Journey to Recovery is talking about the stigma. It's talking about that every single person who is struggling is a human being,
Mhm.
and they're not struggling because they're stupid. They're not struggling because they're lazy. Right. They're not struggling because they don't care about their kids or they don't care about themselves. Mm-hmm. They're struggling because life is really hard.
Yes.
At the end of the day, that's the reason. And like,
there is no soft landing.
There just isn't. And some people suffer in more obvious ways than other people, and it's not fair for the rest of the world to judge them.
Right.
And so my work at Journey to Recovery is really saying, like, hey, we are all humans. Everybody, like every single one of us,
mm-hmm.
has hit a bottom. I don't care who you are.
Right.
We've all had things that really, really hurt and
mm-hmm.
were really hard to overcome. And, you know, some of the people who come in are, like, there's not a single person who ever set out to be an addict.
It was not a birth decision, right?
No. And some people had a surgery or an accident at work.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they're addicted to pain pills, and
mm-hmm.
then they're shooting heroin because it's this really insidious, slippery slope.
Right.
Alcohol's the same way. You know, there's a lot of denial and lying to yourself about that you have a handle on this. And then mm-hmm. all of a sudden you look around and your relationships are gone and your job is gone and
right.
you're sick and you do not have a handle on it.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that you're a stupid, horrible person. But I think our culture loves to make people feel that way.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right.
Go ahead.
Do you see kids?
We do see kids. In fact, we see a lot of kids.
Good.
We see a lot of kids, and kids are asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one thing that's really interesting about, and we're focusing in this conversation on drugs more.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that we see people for, but youth, because pain pills have been around now for 25
mm-hmm.
years, you know, like the opioid addiction problem has been around for long enough that we have generational
right.
opioid addiction. So we have young people who know that there's got to be something better, and they just don't know how to get to it.
Right.
And they want to. But
mm-hmm.
they've been raised in an addiction household. You know, they've watched their parents suffer. There's wisdom
mm-hmm.
that they know that their parents weren't doing that by choice.
Right.
But it's just such a generational family cycle.
If they turn the TV on, all they're going to hear is pop a pill for X, Y, and Z, and the pill is your answer.
That's right. That's right.
It's institutionalized.
It is. And, you know, if you were a young person 20 years ago, you got addicted to pills, and then you have kids, and you have no other recourse of coping. Like,
mm-hmm.
you weren't taught how to cope with anything.
Right.
All you know was, like, get a prescription. So
mm-hmm.
then you take your kids with the good intention even.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, they're addicted too. And nobody has any coping skills,
right.
which is really what Journey to Recovery is about. It's about saying, like, let's take a step back. So you're looking for relief, you know, for whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's these ways that our culture is shoving it down your throat, literally. And
Yes.
then there are these other ways that are a lot harder. You know, it requires looking at the things that are uncomfortable. It requires slowing down. It requires making a plan. It requires follow through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's what a recovery center does.
Right.
And the youth that we see are like so hungry for it. You give them little tidbits of like, hey, this is why. So let's talk about what happened in your childhood that hurt, that was super horrible. See why you're now seeking out all these relationships that don't fulfill you, and giving people the skills to look at things that hurt. You know, it works. Having that outlet and giving people the understanding of why they're driven to make decisions that they do helps people stop doing the harmful things, because they understand
if they have other choices.
That's right. Yeah. So one thing that we haven't gotten to yet since I've started, but we're working on, is prevention. You know, now that high schools are going to be opening, we are in the middle of planning a prevention campaign to work with our high schools, because
And the middle school.
And the middle schools, yes.
Good.
Yes, I know it's so important, and I think that we will hopefully see some pretty interesting results as we go and we open these conversations with the kids. And I do think that kids are a lot more open to these conversations than we think.
Kids are much more open to any conversation, much more so than adults.
Yes, I agree.
Across the board, and they're really able to make good choices.
I think so too. And I think when we're real,
yeah, exactly.
You know, you have to tell it like it is. You can't be like a fuddy-duddy who goes and is like, well, you know, just say no.
Say no, yeah.
No, it's like, what's the dirty secret? Why do drugs feel good?
Yeah. And it's not that the kids don't know. They've seen it.
Right.
Some of them have experienced it. And let's face it, all of us, or else, I drink coffee like it's going out of style.
Me too.
Caffeine's my friend. That's a drug.
It absolutely is.
I can get it in chocolate too.
Right. I mean, it's not probably going to destroy your life like others, but you know, it's definitely an addiction. We had a big giggle about caffeine yesterday at a meeting, actually a prevention meeting, where one of the people who's going to present said, I'm so nervous, I'm gonna have to just drink a bunch of coffee before. And then he thought, wait, is that a drug?
Did they
Wait a minute.
They get the logic about coffee is not a beverage that calms you down, it fires you up. That's why we drink it. Other than it tastes good, but
right. So the Recovery Center is really in a place right now of huge transition itself, where you know, we're trying to get the word out about what we do and why it's so important, and that it's legitimate.
Yes.
You know,
do you see people who are using medication-assisted recovery?
Yes, we do.
Good.
Yes, we sure do. And that's another, you know, a stigma where we try to talk about that. So recovery is not a one-size-fits-all.
Right.
And it used to be, right? Like, so if you were drinking
so
too much,
everybody was told.
you go to AA.
Right.
And you'd follow the steps, and you never deviate.
Right.
And you know.
And for some people that worked brilliantly.
And it still does.
And for others, it was torture. It was one more way of failing.
Right. And it's so much shame. Like, oh my gosh, what if I drink? Oh, now yep, there it is. I failed. And
it was a very male model.
Very male model, absolutely.
Still is.
It is.
Yeah,
and it works for some people.
Absolutely.
And it's great that it's an option for some to have it be so regimented, but it just can't. We are such diverse people with such diverse trauma in our backgrounds, you know, and talking about how we got to where we got is so important. So, you know, some people say they get addicted to heroin, and you're not going to die during detox for
Right.
heroin. You might think you're going to die, but you're physically actually not going to die. Like alcohol, you could actually die
True.
from detoxing from alcohol. It's something that people don't quite understand, the difference. So we do have some people who say, like, I don't want to do any medication assisted treatment. I just want to detox and figure it out. And then there's people who say, like, I can't do that. That's not going to work for me. And
I can't quit my job to take time off to go in and detox
and
in that way.
detox
That
for 3
isn't
weeks or
happening.
4 weeks or
Right.
5 weeks
Not
or 6
happening.
weeks. I can't. And so for people who don't know, MAT, medication assisted treatment, is where you can go, instead of taking a street drug that could kill you, you don't know what's in it, you go to a clinic. Like we have 2 in Newport. We have Bart and Savita. And you get a prescription that then over time is tapered down. And some people stay on it for a very long time. Some people do not. And it does help you get your life back on track. And it keeps you safe, because we are seeing, fentanyl is permeating into so much of the street drugs, and it kills people all the time. And so getting on MAT is safe, and it's a way to take those baby steps toward recovery, and towards ensuring that you're not going to take a drug that you didn't know was laced with something that could kill you.
Right.
So we do believe in that. Another thing that we do, which is, again, like, it's socially against the norm, but we strongly believe that you can't, like, recovery, again, is not a linear path. And so some people have a problem with marijuana, and some people, that's their drug that they need recovery from. And that's real. Marijuana, even though it's legal now, and I think there's a lot of confusion around it, I believe that marijuana is a mind-altering drug, that it may not be addictive, but the way of lack of coping with your feelings can become a problem for some. For others,
It's not.
For others, it's not. Also, if you're shooting heroin and you can smoke some pot to get yourself off of that and find your path,
Right.
and you don't want to take Suboxone or methadone at a clinic, there are ways to find this balance.
Right.
And we, as a culture, and we especially at the Recovery Center, like, our job is to be open-minded. Like,
So you're supporting this.
we're supporting this.
Good.
Because we have to. Because our job is to help people find their path to improve their life. Like, we
Right.
can't be foolish, though, and naive. Like, it's our job to hold the line and be like, I'm going to push you and say, I think you're copping out right now. But that's what we're there for.
Right.
We're there to hold people accountable, but we're also there to say, we're going to look at what path works really well for you. Like,
Yes.
what's going to actually help you. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not popular. It's not popular to think that it's okay to trade one drug for another. But the truth is,
If that's what works.
if that's what works, then that's what works.
Yes.
And it's not going to be forever either. It's, everything is on a trajectory of transformation, and we've seen, I mean, even in a year. So I've only been there for a little over a year, and we've seen tremendous progress in people. Even in 1 year of going from, like, complete dependence on heroin and pills, and
And the
all kinds of
risks
things.
that are with that, either through smoking it or through sticking needles in, because the diseases that can come with those needles is massive.
It
Not
is.
to mention what else is in the heroin
Right.
or whatever other drug you're sticking in there.
Yeah. And so if you can couple your recovery with, like, it's like, it's a soft landing, it's a soft transition. It's a way of coming back into yourself and knowing yourself and looking at, what is it that you need.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's really exciting because what also it does is it takes the shame away.
Right.
A lot of times in our culture, I feel like people say like, stop drinking, do it.
Just like that.
You're great. But everyone's like waiting, like, oh, they're gonna drink again. Oh, they're gonna relapse. Then they do it, and they're like, yes, see, we knew you couldn't do it.
Right.
And what I love about our work is that we say, hey, you know what? We are here to support you as you go.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is a straight line up. Right. You're gonna take some steps back, and it doesn't mean you failed.
Yeah.
It means it's like anything, right? Like the more you push yourself on the edge,
Right.
the more you're gonna find the edge.
Right.
And
you're supporting your staff getting the training and support that they need to be able to continue to do a high pressure job.
We do.
Because it is high pressure.
It's high pressure. It's really important. We all are we are in trainings and supervision really every week.
Yeah.
We're doing more. And some of the groups that we're offering right now are really cool. They're evidence-based, nationally proven groups like Seeking Safety, which is for women who are in or trying to leave or have just left abusive relationships. Like, truly, how do you keep yourself safe? What does that mean? What does that even mean?
Particularly when protection orders are often useless.
Yes. And particularly when abuse is very confusing.
Yes.
And you want to go back to that comfort sometimes. And so it's an awakening.
Gaslight me a little more.
Yeah, it's all me. Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
What more can I do for you?
And I presume you're working some with the other organizations who are also involved in those fields.
Yes. So we also fully recognize who we are, which is we are a peer support center.
Right.
We are not doctors, we are not therapists, we are not clinicians. We do lots of training, we are constantly educating ourselves to be better, but we stay in our lane, and we also look at people who come through the door and say, I think that we can do these things for you, but we're going to call NECA.
Right.
And NECA's Parent-Child Center can do these things for you, and we're going to get you all set up with that. I think maybe Umbrella could support you.
Right.
NKHS is, we work with NKHS a lot with their intensive outpatient substance use program. In fact...
And some of the mental health programs.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. And it's really cool because NKHS is all virtual. People who come to our center can use our computers to log into their groups at NKHS. So
that's great.
Yes, it's working really well. Because we have this great technology.
How did you get all the technology? We're just about running out of time.
Okay, sorry.
But unfortunately.
So we got lucky in two ways. When I came on, the center had been in a lot of turmoil,
right.
And there was a lot of mismanagement. And I do want to say for the record that we do random urine samples on all of our staff now. We are all held to a standard of accountability. There's no drug using in the center ever. There's no drinking. There's no drug deals. There's no nothing. There's, there was, because addicts, a lot of times we have, there's boundary problems. We have very clear rules and boundaries, expectations, accountability of participants and staff. That said, that was not that way in the past. But that also left state-funded money that hadn't been spent through the state. So I petitioned to the state and said, hey, listen, I can use this money that hasn't been spent for these things. Can you please allow me 3 months last summer to put together a plan so that I can get the technology we need. And they granted me that. And then also we were invited to be part of a huge IT technological investment grant through North Country Hospital. And so we were able to build into that grant the things that we need. And so we were granted, it was about $60,000
That's great.
of IT. So we are top of the line with all of that stuff. So that was how we got the money, and that's how we're able to do this, and it's really working.
I think you're a good fundraiser too.
I'm a good fundraiser. Yes, I'm good at that.
That's great. That is such a skill.
It's, a nonprofit is a business. Like, it doesn't matter. It's really about like how you're running a business. You're looking at money, and it's really important, because now if you are fundraising, then you need to be putting your money where your mouth is, and you need to be delivering good services. And I feel so strongly about that.
Yeah.
That it's really about showing the community that it's worth it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. And I was involved with Journey to Recovery at the beginning when there was nothing, and as part of the group that wanted to see this happen, and I transitioned out just as the 3rd Street Centre was opening. It is wonderful to see how far it's come, because it is such an important service, and the peer-led component, from where I sit, is the most important component.
I agree.
That's where the connection is. So thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity.